summer night in June 2014, Derek Broaders had just finished an evening of painting at his new home in Westfield, New Jersey. He went outside to go check the letterbox. Derek and his wife Maria had only just bought the 6-bedroom house at 657 Boulevard 3 days earlier, and they were planning on doing some renovations before moving in. So the letterbox was fairly empty, aside from a few bills and a white card-shaped envelope. It was addressed in a thick, old-fashioned handwriting to the new owner, and the typed note inside began on a welcoming note. Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood. For the Broaderses, buying 657 Boulevard was like a dream come true. Derek had started out with a normal working class job, but he had worked himself up the ladder at a New York insurance company. Because of this, they could afford the $1.3 million house of their dreams. But as Derek kept reading the mysterious card, things took a turn. How did you end up here? The writer asked. Did 657 Boulevard call to you with its force within? The letter then went on to say, 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched it in the 60s. It is now my time. Do you know the history of this house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out. The letter also mentioned the Broaders' Honda minivan, as well as the workers renovating the home. I see that you have flooded 657 Boulevard with contractors so that you can destroy the house as it was supposed to be. Bad move. You don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy. Now the letter wasn't finished there. You have children. I have seen them. So far, I think there are 3 that I've counted. This is what the anonymous correspondent wrote before house with the young blood I requested better for me? Was your old house too small for your growing family? Or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will draw them to me. The envelope had no return address. Who am I? The person wrote. There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 Boulevard each and every day. Maybe I am in one of those. Look at all the windows that you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I am in one. Look out any of the many windows in 657 Boulevard at all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one. The letter concluded with a suggestion that this message would not be the last. Welcome, my friends, welcome. Let the party begin. Followed by a signature typed in a cursive font. The Watcher. It was dark after 10 p.m. and Derek Broadus was alone. He ran like mad around the house, turning off all the lights so no one could see inside. He then called the Westfield Police Department. Moments later, an officer came to the house, read the letter and said, "What the is this?" He went on to ask Derek if he had enemies, and he recommended moving a piece of construction equipment off of the back porch, just in case the Watcher tried to hurl it through a window. Derek then made his way back to his wife and his kids, who were still living at their old home elsewhere in Westfield. That very same night, Derek and Maria decided it was best to write an email to John and Andrea Woods, the couple who had sold them the house at 657 Boulevard. Being suspicious about it all, their email asked if the Woodses had any idea who the Watcher might be or why they had written, "I she had never met, and all of whom were now suspects. After receiving the first letter, Maria stopped by the house to look at some paint samples and to check the mail. When she opened the letterbox, she immediately recognized the thick, black handwriting on a card-shaped envelope in their letterbox. Upon seeing this, she immediately called the police. Welcome again to 657 Boulevard, the Watcher wrote. The workers have been busy, and I have been watching you unload carfuls of your personal belongings. The dumpster is a nice touch. Have they found what is in the walls yet? In time they will. In this letter, the Watcher had addressed Derek and Maria directly, misspelling their last name as Bratis. The Watcher boasted of having learned a lot about the family in the weeks that had passed, especially about their children. The letter made mention of the Broadduses' 3 kids by birth order and by their nicknames. I am pleased to know your names now and the names of the young blood you have brought to me, it said. You certainly say their names often. The letter asked about one child in particular, whom the Watcher had seen using an easel inside an enclosed porch. Is she the artist of the family? The letter went on. 657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in. It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of this house. Have you found all of the secrets it holds yet? Will the young blood play in the basement, or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them. It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream. As creepy as that was, the letter still wasn't finished. Will they sleep in the attic? Or will you all sleep on the second floor? Who has the bedrooms facing the street? Doesn't matter, I'll know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in which bedroom. Then I can plan better. All of the windows and doors in 657 Boulevard allow me to watch you and track you as you move through the house. Who am I? I am the Watcher, and have been in control of 657 Boulevard for the better part of 2 decades now. The Woods family turned it over to you. It was their time to move on, and kindly sold it when I asked them to. I pass by many times a day. 657 Boulevard is my job, my life, my obsession. And now you are too, Braddis family. Welcome to the product of your children over to the house anymore. They were no longer sure when, if ever, they would move into the house at 657 Boulevard. Several weeks later, a third card arrived in the mail. "Where have you gone to?" the watcher wrote. 657 Boulevard is missing you. Meanwhile, the Broaduses, the Woodses, and the police were still trying to figure out who this mystery watcher was. At first, the Broaduses suspected it to be one of the disappointed people who also put a bid on 657 Boulevard. After all, Westfield was a safe and desirable neighborhood, and the house they had bought was like the centerpiece of the boulevard. So Derek and Maria thought it might be one of those people acting out of jealousy for not getting the house. Andrea Woods, however, she had a different theory. She thought it could very well be someone from the neighborhood, considering the mention of the contractors and their trucks and the Broaduses' children in the letters. And the letters, they did indicate proximity. They had gone through the US Postal Service's distribution center in New Jersey. The first letter was postmarked June 4th. Before the sale was even public, the Woodses had never put up a for sale sign, and it was only a day after the contractors had arrived. The renovations were mostly interior, and people who lived nearby didn't complain about the noise, said it wasn't really noticeable to them, even from the jackhammering in the basement. When Derek and Maria walked Detective Lugo around the house, they showed him that the easel on the porch that was mentioned in the letter was hidden from the street by shrubbery and plants, making it very difficult to see unless someone was either behind the house or right next door. A little while later, the Broaduses were invited to a barbecue across the street. At one point, Derek was chatting with a guy named John Schmidt, who lived 2 doors down, when Schmidt told him about the Langfords, who lived between them. Peggy Langford was in her 90s, and multiple of her children, all in their 60s, lived with her. The family was a bit odd, Schmidt said, but harmless. Schmidt pointed out one of the younger Langfords in particular, Michael, who didn't work and allegedly struggled with schizophrenia. Now, when Derek heard this, he immediately considered this case closed. The Langford house was right next to the easel on the porch. The family had lived there since the 1960s, when the watcher's father, according to the letter, had begun observing 657 Boulevard. Richard Langford, Michael's dad, had died 12 years earlier, and the current watcher claimed to have been on the job for the better part of 2 decades. When the Broaduses told Lugo about the family, he said he already knew, and a week after the first letter arrived, he had actually brought Michael Langford to the police headquarters match things mentioned in the letters. This isn't CSI Westfield, Lugo told the Prodigies. When the wife is dead, it's the husband. So of course Detective Lugo made it blatantly clear that he thought Michael Langford was behind this. But sadly, there wasn't too much hard evidence, and after a few weeks, the police chief told the Prodigies that, as there wasn't an admission, there wasn't much the department could do. Derek was absolutely furious. This is someone who threatened my kids, and the police are saying probably nothing's gonna happen. Well, probably isn't good enough for me. Wildly frustrated with the situation, the Prodigies began their own investigation. Derek became especially obsessed. He set up webcams in 657 Boulevard and spent nights crouched in the dark trying to catch anyone observing the house at close range. Maria thought he had gone mad as Derek collected maps of the surrounding area, worked out from which properties the family could be heard in their yard, and he kept a schedule of when the neighbours were home. Derek even hired private investigators to work on the case, this went on for a while, but the Broaders family eventually decided to rent out their property to someone who claimed they weren't afraid of the Watcher. And for a while, peace returned to 657 Boulevard. It seemed as though the nightmare was finally over. No, that is, until 2 years later, when Derek went to the property to solve a squirrel problem that the renter had complained about. The man handed him an envelope that had just arrived. Violent winds and bitter cold to the vile and spiteful Derek and his wench of a wife, Maria. You wonder who the Watcher is? Turn around, you idiots. Maybe you even spoke to me. One of the so-called neighbours who has no idea who the Watcher could be. Or maybe you do know, and you are too scared to tell anyone. Well, good move. I walked by the news trucks when they took over my neighbourhood, and when they mocked me, I watched as you watched from the dark house in an attempt to find me. Telescopes and binoculars are wonderful inventions. Now the letter then went on to say that revenge comes in many forms. Maybe a car accident, maybe a fire, maybe something as simple as a mild illness that never seems to go away, but makes you feel sick day after day after day after day. Maybe the mysterious death of a pet. Loved ones suddenly die. Planes and cars and bicycles crash. Bones break. Now that was the story of the Watcher. Everything I've told you this evening is 100% true and actually happened. It is one of those unsolved mystery cases where they never truly found the culprit. Sure, police, private investigators, the Broaders, the Woods, they very strongly suspected Michael Langford, his father, and his father with his father. I had a lot of fun researching this story. There's an article, and I'll link it in the description